Hello, good morning. Good morning.
Again.
Good morning. Or should I imitate Javi? Good morning.
Yeah,
Amor. Okay, good morning. I hope you had a good rest and you're ready. Our session, Marina Aguareles and myself, we're from the Spanish team, is not as fun as Barbara's. Sorry to bear bad news. The session today, we're going to talk about internationalization of the curriculum. We, as many of you, were part of the online training in May. You remember that we had actually 3 different sessions. We had models of intercultural competence that you have it in the book that has been published by the project, internationalization of the curriculum, and then best practices that you can apply in the class. So what we do, as best as we could, is to mix the 3 of them in these 2 sessions, okay? I'm going to start a little bit, and then we will do the second part more interactive so we can develop some ideas, think about what we do, why we do it, and how we do it a little bit, okay? So if I, oops, okay. Let's start with a game of words. If I give you the word internationalization, I want you to take a pen and a piece of paper and write down 3 words that come to your mind. If I say internationalization, what comes to your mind? Can be anything, anything. We can relate it to higher education, obviously, because we are in the context of higher education. So what do you think if I say internationalization? Languages, yeah, but I want you to write it down. Yes? Thank you.
Shall we say?
No, just write them down. Thank you. And keep them because we will use them later on. Yes? Okay.
So, just a reminder, the people are signing the attendance list.
But this is this, no?
No, that's not. There is another one. They should sign for 5 days.
Okay. Please, there's a list of participation. You need to sign all 5 days, huh? When you get the list for the training. Thank you. Okay, so let me guess something. If what you wrote has to do more with quantity than quality. A lot of you will have wrote, I'm sure you have written mobility programs, right? International students as a number, yes? So basically, the main idea is when we talk about internationalization of higher education, we usually tend to talk about quantity of internationalization of higher education, but not the quality of internationalization of higher education, okay? Why? I think it's very simple. After many years of research, I came to the idea that it's easier for any institutional governance to count how many international students we have, how many international faculty we have, how many Erasmus programs we have, than actually look into the deeper and the very, the main idea of internationalization. But research confirms that actually the main element of the internationalization process of higher education is the quality part, mainly the internationalization of the curriculum, okay? So, basically, most universities, when you go to their web pages, you see the quantity part, yes? But the main heart of any institution is what we teach and what we research about. Yes, that's the main heart of higher education institutions. So that's why today we're going to talk about the internationalization of the curriculum. I know you may say, who are you to tell me, what I have to teach or how I have to teach it? So the idea is, I'm just going to tell you some ideas. That's why I told you to get a pen and a pencil, and I want you to reflect a little bit about your own praxis. Yes? Okay? So let's be truthful about what we do and how we do it. So we teach in a globalized world. Barbara yesterday explained us very well. We need what we have in our classes. The students, they're very different than when we were in university. Different expectations, different cultural backgrounds. It's more diverse than when we studied, etc., etc. So we cannot teach the same way as we were taught, okay? And the first reflection will be that. How do I teach? Have it changed from what I was taught? Or do I follow the same patterns as my professors, or how I learned to be a university professor? Because nobody teaches us how to be a university professors, right? Okay. So basically, the context in where we move in has changed tremendously, yes? The first idea I think will be, and that's the first thing that I want you to reflect, is think about, it's not anymore a teacher-centered classroom. It should be a student-centered classroom. We did another project, Catch 21st, about soft competencies. Should we continue evaluating only content, or should we focus in the process and look at competencies? How do we do that? And this is something that we needs a lot of reflection, because it has a lot of work, from us, And also, it's a lot of work in thinking, how do I change my pedagogy in the classroom? Which is important. It's not only what we teach, but how we teach it. And in order to understand how we teach it and we do it, is who is our audience, who is part of our classrooms, not as static, not moving objects, yes, the quantity part. I have 12 Erasmus students. I have 20 from here, 10 from here, etc., yes? But as people who bring their own culture, beliefs, ideas, ways of learning, knowledge into the classroom, okay? In order to reflect about how we teach, I think that the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what is our objective? What do I want to get, or what do I want my students to get when they finalize my course or my subject, okay? That's how I've done my process. Okay, the problem is that because we are university professors, we think we know it all, right? No? Good. But we tend to think that, they know nothing. They come to get, from the fountain of knowledge, in a very poetic way of putting it, yeah? So, but the truth is, this has changed. And you can access a lot of information from, in this globalized, hyper-connected world, yes? So actually transmitting one way of teaching is not good anymore, yes? Okay, so think about this. Knowledge is bound to culture. What we teach and how we learn depends where we're from, yes? Depends on, I can give you a million of examples. If you come from a collectivistic society, like Spanish or Turkish, we're very circular in the way we communicate, yes? If we have Swedish students or students from Northern Europe, this drives them crazy, because it's not clear, it's not giving me clear objectives, etc., yes? So how we learn, it's bound to culture. Do we like to be like this? Do we like to be in a circle? Yes? I always give this example. I grew up in Zaragoza. I was with 400 students in my class, And the day my professor, being a university, called me by my name, I didn't show up anymore in class because I thought it was very shameful. It's like, oh my God, he knows my name, you know, scary. I got a scholarship and I went to a small college in Minnesota and I took some courses. And I went to the course and we were 7 students and the professor. And we were sitting in a circle and everyone was talking and I said, God, there's a way in this semester that I have to talk. There's no way that I can skip the whole semester without saying a word, okay? So that it's culture, yes? How we think, you know, a professor should teach or shouldn't teach, yes? I always mention this. Professor Michael Page, a very famous interculturalist, will appear in the University of Minnesota, will appear with a suit the first day of class. The next day will be with a Hawaiian shirt. And I will be like, what? You know, if I go to my classes in Zaragoza with a Hawaiian shirt, shorts, and flip-flops, my students will be like, what's this woman? You know, where does she think she's coming from? Okay? So, it is important that we realize that that perception makes us believe who is a good professor, bad professor, if it's a good class or a bad class, yeah? So how do we connect when we have people from different cultures in our classrooms, okay? Okay, so what are the main elements of internationalization? Co-curricular activities, the role of foreign languages, an internationalized curriculum, the use of ICT, now we will include, you know, artificial intelligence, mobility programs, governance and facilities, okay? We tend to think that our students only learn in our classrooms, but actually it has proven that doing work outside the classroom, like service learning, volunteer work in different countries helps them a lot to learn. So Betty Lisk is an Australian scholar who has done a lot of research about internationalization of the curriculum, defines it as follows. It is the incorporation of the international, intercultural, and/or global dimensions into the content of the curriculum, as well as the learning outcomes, assessment tasks, teaching methods, and support service of program study. Yes? Meaning that sometimes talking to our students is well seen in one culture, and to some others, talking to your professor is seen as, you know, I will never talk to my professor. Why should I do that? Okay? So actually the curriculum, as it says here, is the complete portfolio and requirements. It's actually the learning process. Okay? So let's consider this. There are 3 dimensions of the curriculum: formal, informal, and the hidden curriculum. Yes? Let me concentrate today in the hidden curriculum, okay? Which is the implicit message that are conveyed in the learning environment through cultural norms, habits, and values. I would like you now to think, what are those prejudices, stereotypes, or things that we have in our classes? So I want you to reflect about that and write them down, because then later on we will do an activity. What are those things that we will never include in our curriculum? Or what are those stereotypes or prejudices that we bring into our classes? Okay, so I'm going to give you just like 2 minutes or something. You write down some ideas. Do you understand what you have to do? So for example, if I have to teach in my class and I teach history, why don't I include, let's give, for example, in US history, why don't you include Native American scholars? Or if I'm talking about Australia, why don't you include Maori scholars? Yes? Why we only look at part of the content of the curriculum in a way that we think that's the white, male, European standards of what is valid knowledge or invalid knowledge. Do you follow me a little bit? No? Okay, what we learn, it's part of the history. Education is the transmission of history and cultural norms, right? Yes? So what we think it's valid or invalid, it depends on what we have been taught, okay? So that is a barrier for us to move forward in more knowledge. So for example, if I never teach, you know, what is some ideas the Gypsy community can bring into knowledge in the Spanish history, for example, yes? Or if I avoid it in my teaching, okay? Or if I just think that, for example, for engineering, if I just think that German scholars are the best and I just only teach that, I don't take into account, I don't know, Bulgarian scholars for, you know, engineering, for example, yeah? Those are some prejudices and stereotypes that I bring myself, me, not with my students, into my classroom. And that's the hidden curriculum, yes? Or if we know we could talk about racism, but we never do it. Or if I'm teaching political science, but I only talk about one part of political science, you know, one system, and I avoid another system. Or social, you know, sociology, but I just look at one social class and I don't look at other social class, yes? The underrepresented part that has never found a space in our teaching or in our colloquium debates or dialogues. Yes? Yes or no? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you some time, huh? We have a question from Irem. Yes.
Do you mean that, for example,
Shall we listen for a moment, please? Yes.
just a question for the clarification. So if, for example, I teach introduction to political science, do I include just the examples from, for example, Western countries? Just, for example, how is the situation in France, or how is the situation in United States, for example? Whenever I think about political science, I think about United States policy, Western countries. So what happens, for example, in Asia or South Korea? Do you mean this?
Yes.
Okay.
Or for example, you remember we were talking one day about, you had a student from Nigeria.
Nigeria, yes,
Nigeria,
exactly.
yeah?
Uh-huh.
And he pointed out, it's like, oh, it's more democratic or less democratic.
Yeah, we
So-
were comparing each other. So, for example, I never see someone from Nigeria, and when I had this conversation with him, I thought I also have to include the African politics into my curriculum. So I guess you are asking how we design our curriculums, by which examples we are choosing, Western ones or non-Western ones, or
Yes.
this kind?
Yes. For example, there's a very famous scholar that it's Linda Smith, who is a Maori scholar. And he wrote a book, I don't remember now the title, I can find it out for you. And he said, when I started preparing my classes, I do realize that the history of Maoris is all in the British Museum. Yes? How do you teach something that you have never been taught about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a question of, of that. I don't think Maoris are a minority, We call them in the standardized, when we talk about among us, we call them minority, but actually they're not a minority, yeah? So that kind of thing. What do we include? What do we skip? I know it's a little bit of reflection, but...
For instance, we made some interviews for this project, and while we were asking our teachers whether they change their curriculum when there is an international student in the classroom, because when there is an international student in the classroom, teachers have the tendency to give examples from that country, or they ask, what is the situation in your country? If all the students are from that country, teachers have don't, think about other countries or include examples from this. I guess Siearra wants to learn how is the situation in your classroom.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, ready? Should I continue? Okay, very good. And then let's look at the formal, which we know what's the formal curriculum, that it's content and assessment. Keep those notes, because we will do something later on with that. The informal is the students learning outside the classroom. What do we do with them? Do they do research projects outside in the community? Okay, etc. Do we mingle them? Do we mix them in our classrooms? That's about teaching methods, okay? Because we know that you sit down in one place and you sit down again in the same place. How many of you are sitting at the same spot as yesterday? Raise your hand. It's very human nature, okay? Yes, so it's the same with our students. I had students at San Jorge that in their 4th year of degree said, I sat down here the first day of my classes in the first year, and I always pick up the same seat in a different classroom. And I sit always with the same person, yes? So it doesn't matter that we have international students in our classes, because if they don't interact, if they don't have to work together, it's like, doesn't matter. It's like having posters of world maps in our classrooms, yes? Okay? Okay, so seeing and understanding the curriculum and its internationalization as a system that affects what we do research, and how our students learn, is key when starting to think about how to internationalize the curriculum. So those questions that I prompt you, I'm talking about artificial intelligence, I give you those prompts, yeah? It's a little bit the first step to think about how to change our curriculum. What are the main characteristics of an internationalized curriculum? So we have global perspectives, intercultural competence, that we will do an activity later on to see where we're at in our intercultural competence. Interdisciplinary approach. Do we bring culture? And I think we talk about this during the online training. How much is culture into our classes, into our teaching? How much do we take it into account? Yes? Do we ask our students how they feel about it, how they see this in a different way or different perspectives, etc. Critical thinking, okay, which I think is the, we use it a lot, we mention it a lot, but actually it's very difficult to tackle and to teach it, okay? Responsible, I think critical thinking, when you talk about internationalization of the curriculum, could be and must be related to different perspectives that you bring into and questioning your base cultural values that you always take it for granted. Responsible global citizenship, as we saw yesterday from Barbara's presentation. When we talk about labor or human rights, do we talk about child labor or we avoid child labor? Yes? Do we talk about climate change and pollution or we avoid that? Yes? Okay? Inclusivity and diversity, do we take into account different perspectives that we may find in our classes? Culturally, gender, etc., etc. Experiential learning, how much do we have our students doing, not only, receiving information, but let's do something, hands-on learning. Assessment and evaluation, how do we evaluate? Because if we change a lot about the content and then we do a multiple choice test, then forget about it. Faculty development, do we work with other colleagues? Because sometimes we know the academic life is very individualistic, we feel alone and we don't work together. So the co-teaching idea or the sharing activities with one another sometimes gives us support and a good way of moving on. Betty Lisk created an institute, the Australian professor, who work on the internationalization of the curriculum, in where it's faculty support for methodology development. So helping one another is like, I tried to do this, I do it with Marina, I did this and it worked very well, oh, I'll try it as well, you know. I'm going to see this, how it works, etc. Okay? Continuous improvement, local relevance, how much what we do has an impact in the local community. I think that's important, and that helps our students to connect with reality. Sometimes when we get pointed out because universities are like ivory towers that are not connected to reality, it has to do also with how we teach and what we teach. And institutional commitment, how much support we have from our institutions. Okay, so here's a list of how to internationalize the curriculum. You have all this in the book that will be on the web page of the project. We will see later on, there's a very recent survey among many different universities around the world about how to internationalize the curriculum and what is done. What do universities do mostly? Okay, but we have the infusion of courses with international content. How much international content do we have in our classes? I know some people say like, there's no, our content is international per se. I want to reflect a little bit because there's always something that you can add, that it can be with a different cultural perspective that can shake a little bit, you know, how we see certain things, okay? Comparative approaches to research projects and teaching. How much, for example, this training is going to affect our teaching when we are part of Erasmus projects. How much do we implement later on in our classes, yeah? Catch 21 about soft competences, change the way I evaluate and do assessment, for example. And I try to incorporate soft competences in my evaluation, although I feel very lonely, I must say. Studies focus on civilizational studies, international, intercultural studies, etc., etc. But also, how much do we open the debate among our students, bringing some voice to those who are from another culture, yes? And bring that perspective. Sometimes we tend to think, our students think, and there are many studies about this, retrospective studies. They say, for example, with Martha Nussbaum's studies that follow her students later on in life, after 20 years they graduated from the university, Chicago University. They say, I had a classmate who was from Vietnam. I sat with her most of the semester in my philosophy class, and then we had to do a project together. And it was then, the student said, when I started wondering, what kind of religion do they have in Vietnam? Yes? What kind of political system? Do they vote? Is it a dictatorship? Yes? Because our students never wonder, they always think they come from the same system, same norms, same way of working, yes? And they never wonder that the person who's sitting next to them sees the world or has experienced the world in a very different way. More if we take into account different social classes, some students who come with grants, etc., etc. Yes? Okay. So basically, I'm going to go fast on this. The idea is that we use a systems perspective, which is looking into the whole institution, yes? How can I cooperate with some other units in my university to make my students do some volunteer work? How I'm going to give them credit for that, for example, yeah? Or do I make them go out and do some interviews to Emin Bakay about his projects, for example, yes? So move them a little bit and how the whole institution can nurture this change in our classes. This is the theoretical framework and the theory that Betty Lisk used in order to internationalize the curriculum, okay? So you have the institutional context, because I always say this, we talk about internationalization, and when we talk about internationalization of higher education, we think we can internationalize everything. But research says that that's false. You cannot have Harvard University in Zaragoza being Harvard University, because the law is the Spanish law, yes, labor conditions are labor conditions, etc., etc. So the only point actually, that's the institutional context that we can do. The most we can do is within our classrooms with the projects we do, yes? Okay, so that's the first part, institutional context. Then it's local context. How much do we maximize diversity in our cities, towns, etc., etc. National and regional context, same, and then global context. How much do we make them, talking about this critical thinking, right? How much do we make them connect what is happening, I don't know, in different places to to your own reality, yes? I don't know, consuming, yes, relations, etc. So what do we do now? How do we start? Yes, this is, I told you it was not going to be like Barbara's with spaghetti and jamoncitos, marshmallows. In Spanish is jamoncitos, or should I say jamoncitos? Okay. So I think that the first part is what we do now. I cannot tell you what to do because you're experts in your field, yes? And I don't want to tackle your egos, as we are, we know it all. I think it's a reflection, what I mentioned you before, yes? What are our biases that we bring into our classes and into our courses that we teach? And what is the objective? What do I want to reach with my students? When my students, sometimes when I change my evaluation process, I thought about, after they leave university, how do I want my students to remember this course that they took? Yeah? I don't think they will remember because they memorize a lot. Okay? How many of you memorize a lot? A lot, because we all have been memorizing a lot. And we remember nothing from that, yes? So what do we remember and what do we want our students to actually learn? Because actually when we talk about intercultural competence, internationalization, we're talking about significant learning, yes? It's not memorizing or immediate learning, it's the significant one, the long-term one. Okay, and this is just a regular process that it's reflect, imagine, yes? Revise and plan, because what we imagine sometimes doesn't work, or it takes too long, or it's too short, as we know. We act, we do whatever we thought we were going to do, we evaluate again, and we review and reflect again. Okay, this is the process of doing pedagogical change. Thank you very much. Okay. Can we have a break?
Yeah, we will
yes.
have a break. And how long?
When we will start with the practical part.
How long it will be? Then we will lower.
Well, I think we can do more things, huh?
Yeah, because we will have lunch at 12:30.
Okay.
That's now consider that. Let's start again at 11.
Yes.
20 minutes of break.
I think we will be until 12, huh?
Yeah,
right?
Until
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so we have now a break until 11,
Yes.
right? And then we will continue with the practical part. I hope you have your notes, huh? Because you're going to need them for the next part. Thank you.